coffee and cocktails. Today I am going to share my debt confession. So this is all the debt that I had when I started paying off debt and when I started budgeting. I've been budgeting now for quite a few years and I've worked hard to get my debt down. I do still have some debt, but I wanted to share what I started with. So I have a drink to have for this video while I do this. It's a Loverboy white tea peach. I haven't tried this flavor yet, but I've tried a few other flavors that were pretty good. So I am going to open this and then let's get started. That's pretty good actually. Okay, so when I started paying off debt, I had credit cards, student loans, and a car. So let's start. And this is actually the original budget planner that I used when I first started. I've kept all of my budget planners year after year. And so I figured I would write it in this one. So let's see. So first let's start with credit cards. So I had, let's see, 7 credit cards when I first started. And so the first card I had was a Victoria's Secret credit card. So it's a store credit card. I still have this card. There's not much on it at the time I started, or there wasn't a lot on it when I started. I don't even honestly know the last time I used it. So I still have the card, but it is at a 0 balance. So I'm going to do the starting amount, the interest rate, and what the minimum payment was. So this one started out at $20.43. And so that was obviously what the minimum payment was. I don't know what the interest rate was on this one. I couldn't find that information from back then. I never wrote it down since it was such a small amount. So I'm not sure on that one. Knowing that it's a store credit card, it was probably fairly high, probably like, I don't know, 30% or so. So the next card was a Citibank credit card. So the balance on this was $356.88. Again, I'm not sure what the interest rate was on this one, but the minimum payment was $25. The next card is a GM Capital One credit card. I still have this credit card, but I haven't used it in quite a while, so it's at a 0 balance now. But I do still have it. I think that was one of my first credit cards that I ever got. The interest rate on it was 29.9%, which, looking at that now, it just seems like such a high interest rate. It's crazy to me that credit cards charge so much, but all of them are fairly high, so I guess they get their money's worth. The next one was a US Bank credit card. $1,789.87 was my beginning balance. The interest rate was 24.74%, and the minimum payment was $68. The next card is a Discover card. I do still have this credit card. It is paid off currently, but the balance when I started was $6,083.55 with an interest rate of 18.74 and a minimum payment of $122. Let's see. The next card was Bank of America. I still have this credit card as well. It was the last credit card that I paid off. It had the highest balance. So it had a balance of $8,548.46, but an interest rate of only 10.65%, which, I mean, it is a high interest rate, but compared to the others, it's much lower. It's almost a third, less than the GM one. So it's still high, but not as high as it could be. Minimum payment on this one was $160. And then last credit card was a Chase credit card, which the balance was $790.08. And I still have this credit card, but it is a zero balance. Interest rate of 27.74, and minimum payment was $25. Most of these credit cards, I honestly don't even know what was on them. I looked back at my original budget when I very first started tracking things, and I was doing cash advances. I was going to the ATM and taking money off of the credit line just to, pay my bills or to pay other credit cards. And so it got to a point where I just felt overwhelmed by all the debt, and that's kind of what made me start trying to pay it off and to start budgeting, so that I could get reined back in a little bit, and not be borrowing money against all the credit lines to just pay my normal bills. So I'm very happy to say all these credit cards are currently paid off. A couple of them are actually closed. And just looking back at it, it's still even overwhelming just seeing the numbers that I owed. I'm sure a lot of it was also shopping that I had put on there, and just like random stuff, going out to eat, just random things, nothing that I could even remember, honestly. So that is the credit cards. I'm going to go to a different color, I think. It's kind of a similar color. Going into the next section is student loans. I have 2 bachelor's degrees. I went to a private college, so my student loans are fairly high. I started out in a public school, and then I transferred to a private. So it's pretty high, especially with 2 different programs. So I do have the majority of my debt came in the form of student loans. So the first one I had was a Great Lakes loan for $14,146.73, and that had a 12.7% interest rate, and the minimum balance on that was $198.04. At the time, I didn't realize how high that interest rate is, but now looking back at it, knowing a lot more, I see this interest rate and this amount, and it's just crazy to me that that's even like a possible amount that they would loan, or even an amount that they would charge for an interest rate for a student loan. It's just crazy to me, but that's how it works. So let's see, the next one was another Great Lakes, number 2. We'll call that one 1. This one was smaller, $3,922.93, interest rate of 5.23%, and a minimum balance or a minimum payment of $50. Great Lakes number 3 was $1,119.96, and that had a 4.09% interest rate, and also a minimum payment of $50. Another loan that I had from when I went to a state school, actually. I went out of state. I'm originally from the Midwest. I went out of state for my first year and a half of college, and that was at a state school in a different state. And so that's this loan, ECSI, which was $2,154.79. That was 5%, and minimum payment on that was $42.29. I also had a loan through AES, which the balance when I started was $4,828.67 and a 5.38% interest rate and a minimum payment of $43.12. So these were both from the same school. I also had, I think, one or two other loans that I had already paid off before I got to this point, and so it's not going to be reflected here. But I had paid those off before I started budgeting, before I started paying off debt. Okay, so the next, I think, 11 the next 11 loans are federal student loans, and so they are from Fed Loans. And I'm just going to number them 1 through 11. So this is where the bulk of it is. And this is where I still have some loans left to pay. The first one here, Fed Loans 1, this one was $16,206 and a 6.8% interest rate and a minimum payment of $39.88. So looking at that's a very small minimum payment for such a large loan balance. I was at this time already on income-based repayment, so my income was fairly low compared to all the debt that I had, especially for the student loans. And so my minimum payments were very small, but then because of that, I wasn't making any progress and the interest was continuing to build. So actually each month, even though I was making payments, the balance would continue to go up month after month. And so this is where it was when I started budgeting and trying to pay off debt. So loan number 2 is actually a small one, $763.69 and an interest rate of 4.5%. And minimum payment on this one was $2.01. So again, very small amount. And so I wasn't making any progress on it, just paying that minimum. It just continued to grow because of the interest. Loan number 3 was $8,067.02. And that is an interest rate of 6.8% also. And minimum payment of $19.85. Loan 4, $8,301.12. Interest rate was 6.55% and a minimum payment of $20.68. The next loan number 5, was $9,801.85. Also 6.55% interest rate and minimum payment of $24.42. And so you can see just with these minimum payments and this balance and interest rate, there's just no way that I was ever going to make any sort of progress on it if I continued to just pay this minimum payment. So the next loan, number 6, was $5,509.34, 6.55%, and minimum payment of $13.73. The next loan number 7, $8,685.68. Also 6.55%. And minimum payment of $21.64. Loan number 8. Actually 8 and 9 were both for the same amount. And I'm not quite sure why that is. I never really looked into it. I'm assuming they're not duplicates. I should maybe look. But they were both $7,022.35 and both at the 6.55% interest rate and both with a minimum payment of $17.50. Number 10 and 11 are smaller loans and also much lower interest rate, which is good. First one is $2,648.43, interest rate of 2.14%, and minimum payment of $7.58. And the last Fed loan, $3,531.27 with an interest rate of 2.14% and a minimum payment of $10.11. And then let me see what these minimums actually total. Okay, so student loans, these minimum payments per month totaled $578.35. The balances for these just for student loans alone was $103,732.18, which is just crazy. That amount is just insane to me. Even though I do feel that my degrees are useful and I do work in the field of my degree, to me, $103,000 for student loans is just crazy. And this doesn't even include ones that were already paid off. And then my parents also had a loan. And so this is just crazy to me. Yeah. Let's just see the credit cards. Starting balance for the credit cards was $18,149.89. The minimum payments $445.43. So even just looking at this without even adding in my car payment, like I can see why I was stressed for money all the time and why I was doing cash advances off of my credit cards just to pay my bills. Because looking at these minimum payments, I don't even know how I could pay that on the income I was making at the time. Or, I mean, it's just crazy to me. So my last debt is a car. I had just gotten a new car when I started this. I got a Mazda CX-5, so it was brand new and probably not the best decision, but my previous car, which was a Nissan, I had leased and the lease was up. So I had to get a new car. It was either to lease one or to buy one. So I ended up buying the car and I put money down on it. I think I put like $4,000 down and then financed the rest. So starting balance was $24,990.45. It did have a 0% interest rate, which was nice. But the minimum payment was $386.38. So in total, all the balance or all the starting balances was $146,872.52, and just my minimum payments for each month was $1,410.16. So that's quite a bit. Just looking at it, it's overwhelming for me to see it. still, and I've paid off most of it. I've been paying it off for a few years, and so or actually quite a few years. So I've gotten most of it paid off, and I'll do another video saying where I'm at now and how I got there, what I did to get it paid off. But just looking at this on paper is overwhelming to me, and thinking back to where I was at that point, I remember in that time frame feeling very overwhelmed and worrying about if my account would go negative, if I'd have the funds to pay for rent or food or anything. And so I'm not putting this out here to say like, oh, I'm so great for paying off debt or anything like that, but it's just kind of a reminder that you can have a lot of debt and you can make progress and get to a better place. I no longer feel as overwhelmed. Even though I still do have some student loans left to pay, I've paid off all my credit cards, my car is paid off. And it's just, I feel in a much more financially secure position because I've paid off this debt. I can't even imagine if I had not paid it off as I've been doing, if I had not started focusing on it. I'm sure the balances would have just grown. It would have probably been, I don't know, double, who knows. Or if I just had kept spending as I was, because obviously if I had $6,000, $8,000, I was spending money that I probably shouldn't have. So the point of this is really just to say, no matter where you're starting from, you can make progress, you can get your debts paid off, you can make yourself and your family be in a better position financially. And when you do, I'm sure it will feel so much better. And I know how you feel if you're overwhelmed or you feel like you just can't make progress or you don't know where to start. I've been there. I understand completely. Just keep going. You can get through it. You can do it. Everyone starts from somewhere. I started with almost $147,000 in debt, and although it takes time, it's worth it once you get to start paying it off. Even just paying off the first couple credit cards, I remember, I think it was the second or third month that I was paying bills off that I started paying off. I think Citibank and GM I paid off in the same month, and it was the second or third month. And even just that felt so great. Having that extra, basically almost $70 available to start snowballing into my other payments, and just having that extra wiggle room. Part of what I also did was when I first started doing this, I started budgeting. I added up everything I was spending, found out I was spending a ton of money that I had no idea I was spending, and most of it was on credit. And so I think that's also a very good place to start, to see where you're at, see where you're spending, see where you can cut spending, and then take every dollar possible and start applying that to your debt. I started with the smallest and I worked my way up. I didn't completely do the debt snowball method where you do smallest to largest balance, and I also did not do the debt avalanche. I'll go more into that in a separate video, but just for me, getting those quick wins at the beginning and starting with the small balances really helped. It gave me motivation, and it really helped me to see that there was progress and kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how far away that tunnel was, or how far away that light was. It was just a great feeling to start paying it off. So all of that to say, this is my debt confession. I don't think I've ever told anyone how much debt I actually had, or how much I was paying in minimum payments, or how overwhelmed I was feeling financially. But I think it's good to get it out and talk about it. And I'm looking forward to continuing to pay off debt and sharing my journey with you. And I hope you share your journey with me as well. Leave your comments below. Tell me how you're doing, what kind of debt you have, where you started, how you're doing now. If you have any questions, just let me know. Happy to answer any questions or comments. And I hope you liked this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.